bad about editing this. Yeah.
Entomophagy, is that right? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yeah, so entomophagy is quite an ugly word, but so I don't really like using it, so I prefer just edible insects.
Okay.
But it literally means to consume insects.
Okay, to consume insects, and it's an umbrella term, right? It's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
just specific insects. It's a lot of different.
No, it's literally like, worldwide, so insects.
Sure.
The wide spectrum of all insects all over the world.
Okay, and so, I guess the next best question to follow on from that would be, why are we even talking about entomophagy or eating edible insects? Why all of a sudden this idea that's come to Western culture? Why edible insects?
Yeah, good question. This conversation would have been a lot different like 10 years ago, or even 5. Like even the past couple of years, even the past 12 months, there's been like a massive shift in how people think about food and what they kind of consume on their daily life. And there's kind of like this almost like food enlightening period that's happening right now. So people are not just concerned about the food, they're concerned about where it comes from, the impact it has on the environment. And so right now we're seeing this huge trend in alternative proteins. And so right now in the news there's a lot of hype around, or should I say interest in plant-based foods. So the big brands out there. But besides kind of plant-based foods, there's also fungus-based, lab-grown meat, and then also edible insects. And so all these other alternative proteins are kind of like rising in popularity with the rise of the youth and their opinions around sustainability and ecological design and impact it has on the environment. So there's a huge current resurgence in awareness of the key issues that are happening and facing our planet right now.
Yeah, I think that's really key. Obviously a lot of what my blog is talking about is climate change in general and environmentalism, and it'd be great to talk more about sustainability and sort of the environmental impact that edible insects have on our planet and producing them, because ultimately, the current state that we're in at the moment with agriculture, rearing livestock, is very, very inefficient, very, very unsustainable for our population, which is growing beyond 7 billion now. So could you tell me a little bit more about the sustainability, environmentalism impacts?
Yeah, sure. You kind of just especially in the West, there's just, the average person is increasingly concerned about the intensive meat industry and all the knock-on effects it has, from land use to water use to CO2 emissions. For example, if cows were a country, they would be the 3rd biggest greenhouse gas emitters worldwide, in between America and India. So just cows by themselves emit a huge amount of carbon and methane and greenhouse gases overall. So these alternative proteins, especially edible insects, are rising in popularity because of their environmental credentials. So they use a fraction of the water and land needed, as well as consuming a fraction of the feed. So they have a really good optimizational rate of feed and water conversion, which reflects its credentials of being a great alternative to traditional livestock.
Sure, but obviously it makes sense, doesn't it? Because insects are a lot smaller than rearing traditional livestock that we use in Western culture, such as cows and sheep and the like. However, because they're a lot smaller, is there an issue with the percentage of protein in insects? How much more would you need to eat? If you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, no, good question.
Proportionally with insects.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. Well, firstly, percentage-wise, an average cut of beef is around 20% protein, compared to mealworms, which is almost 55% protein. So kind of a huge difference in the percent-wise. Unlike beef and other mainstream meats, you eat the whole insects, so exoskeleton and everything. So not only do you get the protein, but you also get all the micronutrients, such as calcium, potassium, and all the essential amino acids. So there's minimal waste, whereas if you were to eat a cow, not only are you investing time in rearing, so several months to years to actually make this cow, you also do need a large percentage of it, so from bones and other such things. So the conversion rate in that sense is very inefficient.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good, very key point to continue with. That is that the waste aspect of agriculture in general at the moment is very, very inefficient, very wasteful generally. If you're talking about traditional methods, and I think the idea that when you're eating insect, entomophagy in general, as you said, you're eating the entire bug, right? The entire insect, so nothing goes to waste.
Yeah.
But in terms of a production side, what are the wastes involved if you're going to produce on mass insects comparatively to agriculture? Because obviously all the methods involved with agriculture, obviously it needs huge warehouses. It needs huge sort of techniques to keep these cows. You see some horrible videos, don't you, on the internet, of how cows are kept in huge barns and everything, and how, ethically it's horrible, isn't it? And I guess that raises another question, doesn't it, about the ethics of rearing insects. So how would you do that?
Well, so I guess if I answer the first half of that question first, so the how you actually rear insects compared to the conversion between traditional livestock. So insects are, as you know, tiny, and so that allows you to have great versatility in how you farm them. So what's being done in many nations is basically vertical farming, in which you can have, warehouses, small places, and literally you can farm insects in a tiered system in a small environment, and you can basically just grow them vertically in multiple trays, have them stacked up, and so they're extremely efficient in that sense. And they love to basically mealworms love to live in close proximity and swarm with each other, so capacity can be optimized in that sense. Where compared to a cow, you literally have this huge thing that needs a certain amount of room.
I guess this leads perfectly on to your company then, and we're talking about the real sort of specifics here, like vertical farming. So tell us about your company. Is it BeoBia? Is that you pronounce it?
That's one way to pronounce it. Yeah. So it's actually based on the Irish Gaelic word meaning food for life. So a bit like tomato. BeoBia, BeoBia.
Sure, BeoBia then. Tell us about the company. Tell us about it. The fact you mentioned about 8 billion is the conservative projection of the market insect market.
It could be, I believe so, yeah.
It could be that, and that's a conservative one. Obviously, there are certain countries in the world that are already used to and already adapted to eating, not adapted, but they're very used to eating insects already as part of their culture. Am I right in thinking that those are the countries where the populations are growing the most? Therefore, is it really going to spread into Western culture as much, or?
Yeah. So currently, 2 billion people worldwide eat edible insects, and you're spot on. Most of that is most of those insects are being consumed in non-Western regions of the world. So, for example, like Sub-Saharan Africa, Southeast Asia, but edible insects, a bit like saying eating mammals. You don't really say that. You say, oh, I eat beef, I eat pork. So much like that, you don't really say, I eat edible insects. It's like, oh, I consume mealworms or crickets or grasshoppers. What might be depicted as, a traditional food in, let's say, Vietnam, would be seen as something weird in Nigeria. So all these different countries have different connotations because of the diversity of edible insects. In the West, it's nowhere near as popular as it is in other regions of the world. But due to this current food enlightening that's happening right now, especially with young people, people are increasingly concerned about the impact the food has on the environment. And so with that, these foods are being re-looked at in a different light. So for example, there's Mintel did a sample poll into people in the UK and found out that 43% of young males in the UK are interested in eating edible insects as a high protein meal. And so that's 43% of young males, almost 1 in 2. So quite a huge number of interest, and obviously that interest can, it can be from moderately interested to very interested. But that shows that is reflecting the current trends in where things are heading. And as things proceed, I imagine those interest levels will only get greater.
Perfect. And so I hear you have a gift for me in trying to help me.
Yes, I do.
Integrate insects into my diet. What exactly are you giving me?
So I'll be giving you a range of samples from whole mealworms to powdered mealworms, in which you can use and I guess explore the versatility and taste of mealworms in your diet for a week. So I think it'll be quite a fun experiment, and I hope you're looking forward to it.
I'm quite. It's quite a daunting task to eat insects for the first time. I mean, I eat a few meats. I'm not. Haven't really gone onto the vegan diet or anything really. I mean, I mainly eat chicken. However, the idea of suddenly changing to insects is quite daunting. What kind of tips do you have for me or for anyone really?
It's extremely versatile. Very mild taste, so it allows you to use it in a range of foods. So for example, the powder, you can use a powder in a range of snacks. So if you like cookies, muffins, sweet treats, to really kind of ease you into the idea of eating insects. It can be made into the powder. You can use it to make bread, also pizza dough. So it kind of like it gets rid of the cognitive bias you have and the issues that you have around the idea of insects, and then you can have the whole insects, use them as garnish sprinklings, make, beef burgers out of them. Okay,
I think what you mentioned about the powder is probably definitely my first best bet. I think to sort of ease my way into powder and then move on to maybe the whole insects on day 2 or 3 would probably be
why not?
Be a good idea. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been great to find out about your BeoBia products. And I'm just excited to get on with my diet now.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, all the best, and I'm looking forward to catching up with you later.
Sweet, thanks very much.
Welcome.